out and about driving around in the country.
Country.
Behind two very slow school buses. We're just kind of messing around right now. She has to go to work shortly. I am going to be doing some homework for Evolved Ministry here very shortly. May take a nap and then get back up and do more homework for Evolved Ministry. So, there's a few things I actually wanted to talk about, and that's choices, especially when it comes to lower vibrational choices, negative choices. We were watching some stuff, and this is part of what I do. I do a lot of research and I study human nature on this planet. Turn this down just a little bit. So my thing is to study human nature. There's a hawk right there. That's beautiful. Anyway, my thing is to study human nature on this planet and to figure out why things happen the way they happen, so that way there's ways of teaching people preemptively before maybe something occurs into their life that makes them do something very negative or something that is a horrible choice that will cause harm upon them and upon others. And so I did some work earlier today, and I do it quite a bit, on serial killers. Now myself, when I was younger, I actually was going to hunt serial killers. I was going to be a bounty hunter. And so I studied a lot of the way they thought, why they made the choices that they made, and what led them to from point A to point B. But it's not just serial killers, okay? Things that lead to violence in general, rape, aggravated assault, even just as, down to something as simple as fighting. And there are many common denominators that lead a person to do something extremely stupid, and that's what I call it. It's basically just stupidity. Some people have what you would call evil tendencies. I used to have evil tendencies myself, but I always realized that things are also choice-oriented. Do you agree?
Yes, I do.
And just because you feel an urge does not mean that you have to act on a certain urge. Just because you feel an emotion does not mean that the emotion controls you. You are not helpless, and there is nothing out there that can control you unless you allow it to. You can get to a point where you make so many negative choices, so many lower vibrational behaviors that you openly choose to do, that eventually one day you do lose control. That is a thing that can occur. And basically what it is you are tuning your own numerics. You're tuning it just like a radio receiver. And every single time that you choose to make a choice that is negative, then basically what you're doing is you're setting your preferences. You keep setting those preferences on a negative level, and one day you might find yourself out of control. And the reason why you would find yourself out of control is because of the nature of the universe that we live in. There are many and multiple intelligences that run all through this place. These intelligences are guided by numerics. They are guided, and they are kings and masters of those frequencies. And once you have dialed your number over and over and over again to a certain preference, eventually one day you might find yourself doing something. You may find yourself, it seems like you're in a dream state, that it's not even really happening, but then the next thing you know, you're in it, you're doing it. And you may even find yourself waking up from that scenario, and then you're like, oh my God, what did I do? You may not even have a memory of it. But you see, something else jumped in there for that moment. Something else went in there and started making decisions for you, because at that particular point, you surrendered yourself to it by the amount of choices that you made up until that very point. So once you get used to the idea of surrendering your mind, your body to choices and certain appetites, you're relinquishing control over your own body and mind. And you, at that point, have done it willingly. It doesn't matter if something else took over for you and then stepped in and did all these horrible things. You yourself, by your own preferences, by your own deeds and the way that you set up your life, have given that over. And so, by default, by your own decisions, you've allowed yourself to engage in something that may not be very honorable, may be downright disgusting, may be horrible. You know, a lot of people, when they drink alcohol, their inhibitions get lowered. Alcohol in itself is a numeric. It's the reason why they call those things spirits. Alcohol is referred to as spirits. Me, myself, I don't much believe in spirits, but I do believe in intelligences. What you call a spirit, I call intelligence. And whether it be drugs, whether it be alcohol, meth, whatever you want to call it, those things are also going to dial your numbers down. You're going to have a lack of judgment. What some people call lack of a judgment, other people call possession. But one way or the next, these things start to control you and you not control it.
Well, again, please understand that even all these years later, it's very difficult to talk about it, and reliving it through talking about it is difficult, to say the least. But I want you to understand what happened. It was like coming out of some kind of horrible trance or dream. I can only liken it to after, I don't want to over-dramatize it, but to have been possessed by something so awful and so alien, and then the next morning wake up from it, remember what happened, and realize that basically, in the eyes of the law, certainly in the eyes of God, you're responsible. To wake up in the morning and realize what I had done, and with a clear mind and all my essential moral and ethical feelings intact at that moment. Absolutely horrified that I was capable of doing something like that. The kinds of violent behavior.
It fueled your fantasies, didn't it?
Well, in the beginning it fuels this kind of thought process. Then, at a certain time, it's instrumental in what I would say crystallizing it, making it into something which is almost like a separate entity inside.
Do you remember what pushed you over that edge? Do you remember the decision to go for it? Do you remember where you decided to throw caution to the wind?
Again, when you say pushed, I know what you're saying. I don't want to infer again.
I understand that.
That I was some helpless kind of a victim, and yet we're talking about an influence that is the influence of violent types of media and violent pornography, which was an indispensable link in the chain of behavior, the chain of events that led to the behaviors, to the assaults, to the murders, and what have you.
And the one thing that I was really paying attention to in many of these stories that the serial killers told was the fact that they lost control. The fact that they considered what had occurred. They said it was like they were watching someone else do it. Ted Bundy essentially said that he felt as if something alien had come into him, that he was possessed by something horrible, something evil, that he would have never have made those decisions on his own. And it was a matter of all the choices that he had made up to that point to where something finally was able to control him. He had a lot of anger towards women. He had a lot of anger towards the system. And then he watched tons of negative pornography, violent pornography. All those things started to dip his numerics down. He started drinking a lot. And then you couple all of those things, and it will create a powder keg of behavior that is destructive.
Building up of this destructive energy. Another factor here that I haven't mentioned is the use of alcohol. But I think that what alcohol did, in conjunction with, let's say, my exposure to pornography, was alcohol reduced my inhibitions. At the same time, the fantasy life that was fueled by pornography eroded them further.
So what I'm telling people is that you have full control over yourself regardless if a situation occurs where you black out and then you've done something horrible. You had choices all the way up until the point of the blackout. You had choices that you could have made that could have altered the history of what was going to happen, altered all of those little moves and turns and mistakes. There's all sorts of things that you could have done. You could have talked yourself out of it. You could have made a different move. You could have made a different choice. You could have used logic, but instead you find yourself in a situation that is negative because of the choices that you made. So every single moment that you live is a chance to create. Every single moment that you're alive is a chance to do something constructive. And a lot of people out there, they've screwed their habits up so bad that they end up doing something deconstructive. Sometimes we have circumstances where things happen to us, and you have a choice at that point too. Maybe something negative happened to you in your life, but just because something negative happened to you does not mean that you need to do something negative to someone else. A lot of people use that as an excuse. Well, this was done to me, therefore I was just following the same pattern of abuse. Well, I don't buy it.
Yeah, and in the end, you don't even end up breaking the cycle, because there's a reason that things happen to everybody, and you can take that experience and you can turn it around and grow from it, and turn it into a positive, I guess you could say. Just take that experience and you learn from it, and do things like not repeat it to someone else, because you know how horrible something like that can be. Maybe help other people who have experienced similar types of things, but instead to just go turn around and do that again to somebody else, you're just continuing that same cycle, and that's not how you break free from it, and there is no release, I don't think, from doing that.
The idea of a cycle itself, okay, I want you to understand that they say repetition is hell. Hell is repetition. If you find yourself in the same action, in the same cycle over and over and over again, obviously there is something that you're not doing correctly to get yourself out of the cycle. Now, if it's a positive cycle, why would you want to get out of that? I personally like positive cycles, but if there's something that is completely destroying me, if there's something that I am doing that is destroying others, then I am not going to continue to participate in that. Why? Because it's deconstructive. I personally like to see people rise to the best that they can possibly be. I like to see people evolve. And if you're constantly doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, you're not evolving, and you're being an idiot. That's about the only way I can describe that. You are being a fool. You have millions of options available to you. I've often said that I'm very disappointed in the way this world turned out, because we could have had any system. We could have had any way of handling things. There doesn't need to be a homeless person, period, on this planet. And yet, the system that we came up with was the best that mankind could think of. I don't buy that either. A lot of people say, well, you know, it's all being governed by people who are now in control of us. That's not true. 7 billion people on this planet, and 7 billion people can't stop about 3,000 to 5,000 elites.
Right.
That's incorrect. It's because people are lazy. They're apathetic. They don't want to make the change. And if something negative isn't directly happening to them, they don't see any reason why they should stand up and do something for someone else. But on the flip side, I've noticed that if something negative happens to you'll want everyone to step in and provide relief. And that's what it seems to always happen. No, it's not my problem. It's not my problem until it is your problem. So the thing is why create unnecessary situations for yourself? There is no reason to engage in negative behaviors. There's no reason to engage in cycles and let them continue. If you see something coming back around, it's time to make a change, to stand in there and be as direct as possible and end it. You do have the ability to change what is in front of you at all times. Train wrecks don't have to occur. A lot of people say it's like standing there watching a train wreck happening and there's nothing I can do about it. I can't tell you how many train wrecks I've personally stopped. All it took was for me to involve myself and to make a choice. I can't tell you how many times that I was on the verge of making a really bad idea. I was on the verge of making a really bad choice. And then I chose to spin it around. I'm going to tell you something. I've told her this some time ago, but this is an example. One time, a long time ago, it's probably like 18 years old, 17, 18. I was with a bunch of friends, a group of friends. And we were walking out at nighttime. And these kids that I was hanging out with, we were like, you know, the police in town called us a gang. We weren't really a gang. It was just a bunch of stupid friends. Well, anyway, this one guy who thought he was the head of the group, which he found out that night that he was not, he decided that it was time for us to just go out and beat someone up. Well, we were walking along the train tracks out by Indiana University, and we saw a couple walking hand in hand, and they were down below. They couldn't see us, but we could see them. And this couple, they're just walking along, they're talking with each other. They have no idea that there's a group of about 7 or 8 guys up in an area planning to go down there and kick the holy crap out of them. Tony had decided to tell us, hey, let's go down there and beat them up and take their money, take whatever they got. Well, that suggestion, it was a suggestion, that's all it was. And all of a sudden, the entire group gets ready. They're all getting prepared. Everyone's getting ready to walk down from the area that they were at, because we were in an elevated area. We could see them. We're all getting ready to walk down there, and we're going to beat the hell out of them for no other purpose than to bring hell to them. Been a nightmare. As we're walking down there, I immediately just stop. Tony looks at me and he's like, what's going on? I'm like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not beating the hell out of anyone. These people didn't deserve it. They've never done anything to me. Why do I want to do anything to them? That comes out of my mouth, and the next thing you know, the other guys stop and they look at me, and then they're like, yeah, I don't want to do this either. The next thing that happens is I start walking off, and everyone turns around with me, and we all start walking off together, and Tony's still standing back there trying to figure out what just happened. It's a choice, people. You can engage in positive behavior, or you can engage in negative behavior. Had we had gone along with that suggestion, we would have beaten the hell out of a man and a woman. Actually, they were probably 18, 19 years old. They were students. we would have hurt two people who were down there having a good time and in love with each other. And we would have brought hell to their night. They probably would have been hospitalized next morning and scared to death. Who knows what would have occurred. But all I had to do was say no. One person had to do was say no. And that same suggestion kicked in there. And then everyone had the decency to listen to what I had said, turn around, and walk off too. And then Tony was left standing there by himself, and what ended up happening is, guess what? He turned around and walked off as well, following us as we walked out. What kind of a person do you want to be? Me, I decided a long time ago I want to be the type of person that if I can, I'm going to help other people. If I can, I'm going to show them love instead of show them evil. I'm going to show them love instead of show them hate. And as a younger man, because it was surprising that I even did that back then, I was a pretty mean son of a bitch. Okay, when I was a kid, not only was I a fighter, I was a boxer and a kickboxer, I was also getting into cage fighting, but I just loved to fight. And when it came down to it, my thing was to beat up bullies. That's what I liked the most. I like to get a hold of the guy that loved to down other people. My whole thing was beat the beater. Well, even that wasn't that cool. I mean, eventually I went into bar bouncing because that allowed me to do it legally. I almost became a bounty hunter, which I didn't because my mom talked me out of it. But that was my whole thing in the world, because when I was in high school, I got picked on quite a bit for no other reason than to be picked on. I was very timid back then. I knew how to fight extremely well, but my parents basically had my will beaten so bad that I would rather not defend myself at school because I didn't want to go home and be beaten there. And I'm not saying that my parents beat me per se. They definitely, if I did something wrong, they didn't hold anything back. But that's my whole point. So I could have chosen to do any number of things to those kids that night, but instead, because I made a choice that I personally wasn't going to have anything to do with hurting people who were innocent, who had not hurt me, I convinced an entire pack of kids that were getting ready to do it. We're getting ready to beat two kids for no reason. 7, 8 people on 2 people. It's horrible. That would have came out so horrible.
Yeah.
Given my reputation at that time, I would take on 4 to 5 people at a time, and that is no joke. When I was younger, I was a leviathan. I was a monster. I was scary. And I would myself would go against 3, 4, sometimes 5 people just to prove a point. I could have handled those 2 kids without a problem. And to imagine that I had 6 or 7 other people with me at that time, that would have been a bloodbath. So ask yourself, who do you want to be? What's most important to you? Do you want to bring pain on this planet to where no one likes you, to where everyone is scared of you? Because a lot of people like the idea of people fearing them. If people fear you, they don't trust you. If people fear you, they actually hate you. They'll pretend to be friendly with you, pretend to be nice to you, but they're only doing that because you provide this aura of negativity that they don't want to experience on a physical level. I myself do not want people to fear me ever. I'd much rather have love and respect than anyone's fear or hatred, because it doesn't get me anywhere in life. And all of that negativity, it corrodes you from the inside to the outside. I can tell you this, fear and hate ages you faster. It breaks down your body. It breaks down your mind. And eventually, once you throw out so much fear against others, eventually it's returned back to you. You're going to be in a situation one day where someone else can dominate you. and then they won't hesitate, and it'll get worse, and it'll get worse, because if you put yourself into that fear, that world, and that category of the way that operates, and then that's the way that you personally operate, eventually it cycles itself back around to where you are the victim of it. You can only be on top of anything for so long before that whole world turns back around and turns you upside down. And a lot of people like the idea, when it comes to energy work, of playing with the dark side, playing with negativity. You have no idea what you're dealing with. You have no clue what you're playing with. A lot of people do it because they think it's cool. And believe me when I say there's stuff out there that will swallow your teeny little soul whole. I myself have played with both sides. When I was younger, I played with a lot of dark stuff. And trust me when I say, again, I'm going to make this very clear, and I'm not saying this because I want you guys to go out and test it. You don't want to test it. There's stuff out there that's made of fear, and you can sit and think that you are such a badass because you're playing with it or you're going against it, but it will break you. You have no idea what you're playing with. There are worlds out there, worlds that are made of that frequency. You are but one little teeny soul. Teeny, 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 tiny. You're itsy bitsy. And this universe isn't even where it stops, ends, or begins. There are worlds out there that are bigger than this universe that are made of that frequency. So I want you to keep that in mind. And there's intelligences out there that they will swallow you whole. It's more important to understand that we are all made basically of the same thing. And if that's the case, and if that's true, then we should all be looking out for each other and supporting one another, as opposed to trying to get over on one another. Playing with the dark side, that's kiddie stuff. It took me a long time to realize that too. It's like child's play. Because as big as the dark side believes that it is, the flip side of that force can swallow it whole. Without any problems. Love is an extremely powerful thing. And I have had the fortunate, I've had so many experiences with both that I am very proud to say that I am with the love force side of things. That's not to say that I'm perfect. That's not to say that I don't make mistakes. That's not to say that I don't sometimes feel emotions that are overwhelming. But I typically stay on the logical side of the equation. And logic is what keeps me from making mistakes that are negatively polarized. Recently, when my brother was basically killed by a dentist, he was overdosed with an anesthetic, and the dentist did not follow protocol, did not follow procedure. The old Michael swelled up for a while, the one that I wanted to go and just bury this man, okay? But instead of become a victim, and that's what it would have been, become a victim of this emotion and allowing it to control my actions, I chose to stay on the logical side of the equation. Oh great, we're gonna be behind this male guy.
It's okay.
Anyway, chose to stay on the logical side of the equation and do what was proper. Because you know what? Who knows? I'm sure the dentist didn't mean to kill my brother. I'm more than positive of that. I'm sure the dentist realized that he made a very, very horrendous mistake. Now, I do believe that we probably should have followed up legally. I believe that my parents probably should have made different decisions than what they did. But they understood the idea that this guy didn't mean to kill my brother, so they decided not to legally pursue this whole thing. But had I succumbed to the emotions that I was feeling, I would have reverted back to my younger days, and I probably would have gone and beaten that man half to death. Now, where would that have gotten me? Jail. That would have also have compromised all of the progress that I have made as a human being and as a soul trying to evolve and understand my place in the universe. Yeah, right now we are at Lake Griffey. We are in the forest of Lake Griffey. And we're getting ready to go down to the area where the lake meets the land. So, here's my point. All of these serial killers, they described what it was like in those very moments when they finally snapped. And it was always a situation where they say they snapped, where they lost control, where they felt as if something else was controlling them. Okay? That means at that point that they are no longer making proper decisions. That means that something overtook them. And there's nothing cool about that. When you lose complete control and you succumb to violence, all you're doing is showing that you yourself are not mature enough to control your own mind, body, spirit, and what you've been given. When you step over and allow yourself to cause harm to others for any reason, whether you're insulting them, whether you're causing fear, all of those things is just negativity. You're acting as basically an energy vampire. And most everyone, even energy vampires, seem to hate energy vampires. That's the thing that I find really hilarious about it, is there's people out there who will even describe themselves as energy vampires, but they hate it when people do it to them. So, again, what do you want to be? So what do you think, Seth? Go ahead and talk.
What did I even say after what you said?
There's plenty.
Yeah. I think with what you said about people liking the dark stuff and they want to play with it and they think they're so cool for doing it, a lot of times they're like really scared, I think, of it. And when they have like any sort of experience, they're really scared and they're very frightened by it, and they want to just like put on this show, this front that they're like
so
tough. Yeah, they're so brave, they're so tough, they're so hard, because they're playing with this kind of energy. But like I said, they're frightened the moment anything happens at all, and most of the time they're probably not experiencing too much, or even if they do, then they're freaking out and telling everybody and begging someone to help them, to exorcise them, or to get some demons out of their house. Or
well, you've seen that personally.
Exactly.
Many times when people have come to me and asked
that example. So it's kind of funny to me that it's like that. I feel like a lot of people who are wanting to be on the negative side, they're just, a lot of times they're just a bunch of posers, for lack of a better word. So, it's just a silly bunch, and a lot of people are like that. There's a lot of people who, are actually like really, really dark and, are on that side, but a lot of the times what you don't know or what you don't hear is how they're being controlled by something else, like smarter than them,
and how fearful they are of it.
Yeah.
Kevin.
Yeah.
I won't say his last name, but
yep.
This was a guy that was on the dark side for a very long time, and at the end he was begging me to help him get away from it. Also, on multiple occasions, I had friends that were always, they were drawn to it. They really liked the idea that they were playing with something dark and something negative, but the minute that stuff really began manifesting and occurring around them, they were, again, just as I was saying a second ago to her, she has seen people come to me and ask me to get the stuff out of their homes. And I've had more than enough occurrences where people were playing with stuff that they thought was going to be really cool, and then when they found out that this stuff was really real and it was surfacing and it was actually starting to change things in their homes and change things that they were experiencing and changing their dreams and then changing actions of people around them, negative things started happening all the time, that's when those people came to me and then wanted me to exorcise the demons, okay? And Lisette's also seen what it looks like when those things are cleansed out, let's just say. And it's not just exorcising a person, it's exorcising a place or getting rid of certain numerics that are occupying an area. And believe me when I say it causes some real serious stuff in the atmosphere. And it's not just the people that start acting funny. It's everything. You'll start to hear animals go completely insane. You'll start to hear things happening in the environment that were not there before. The environment will go from nice and warm to deathly cold within seconds. And you see, the funny thing is I don't much believe in spiritualism. I don't much believe in demons. But I do know this. I do know that there are intelligences out there, and I do know that these creations that people have in their minds manifest into the three-dimensional environment. And so I had to do some exorcisms on people that didn't even know that they were being exorcised. And that's when you see some real stuff occur. See, oftentimes when you watch Catholic priests do it, and you watch all those movies and everything, those are people that know that they're about to be exorcised, so they play a role. Okay, so if a priest comes over, he's getting ready to exorcise, the person knows that they're being exorcised, the priest knows that he's exorcising. In other words, you have a collaborative effort between two people. One's playing a role, the other one's playing their role, and it basically boils down to a bunch of acting. Because I've watched it happen before, I've watched exorcisms occur before, and I could tell it was nothing but a bunch of fakery. But after having done multiple myself on people who didn't know that it was going to happen, that's when you see the real deal occur. She got to see it for herself.
Yeah.
A few of my other students have gotten to see it for themselves, and it can get quite hairy. But again, the things that are occupying people, these are intelligences that are tuned to certain frequencies and numerics, and these frequencies and numerics that they're tuned to, those things are being called up by people's preferences. The only way that they can occupy you is if you are in this type of a zone in the first place. If you are actually enacting in negative manners, then you've made so many negative choices that eventually those choices manifest themselves as intelligences. Who do you want to be? Do you want to be a positive person, a person that people come to when they need help, a shoulder that you can lean on? Or do you want to be the type of person that people look at you and dread your presence? I know what I want to be, and I hope you know what you want to be. And all it takes are the choices, making positive choices and being that frequency. You can't claim that things keep happening to you. Oh, all these bad things just keep happening to me, blah, blah, blah. Why is this negativity just always coming towards me? It's because you bring it to you. Now, certain times, there are certain times that accidents just happen, and I know that. But if you are in a situation where stuff's constantly always happening to you, then it's something that you're doing. It's a choice you're making. Love.